Hello and welcome to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. In today's video, we are going to have another installment of our Up and Up series, where we update and upgrade our Kaalia of the Vast EDH deck. Greetings and salutations to the MTGBC. You are the MTG Burgeoning community. Welcome to another installment of the Up and Up series. Today we are going to update and upgrade Kaalia of the Vast, one of the EDH decks that's in the BCC, which of course is the Burgeoning Commander Catalog, a playlist of EDH decks that you could see on the playlist link at our channel. In addition, you can click the link to tappedout.net and see the current deck list of this build, of this deck. All right, with that being said, we've got some ways to update and upgrade our Kaalia of the Vast deck, and it begins with what may become, if not already, one of the most powerful red creatures ever made. And it comes in the form of a demon from one of the Warhammer 40k pre-constructed decks, and that is Bloodthirster. Here we have a 6/6 demon. It's 5 and a red. It has flying and trample, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, we untap it. And after this combat phase, there is an additional combat phase. Bloodthirster cannot attack a player it has already attacked this turn. So let me roll out the scenario for all of the Kaalia fans out there. It is very, very reasonable to get Kaalia out on turn 3 with haste. That's not impossible. If we have Bloodthirster in our hand as well, we can send Kaalia into hasty combat, and let's face it, by turn 3, most of our opponents are not set up for defense. They certainly most likely don't have any blockers in the air or any reachers. So, in Mardu colors, of course, we're going to do what Mardu does best, and that's going to be attack, attack, attack. We send these creatures into combat, and of course, Bloodthirster comes down, deals combat damage to opponent 1. We untap Bloodthirster, we send it into combat against opponent 2, and then we keep doing that until every single opponent has gotten a taste of what Bloodthirster brings to the table. On turn 3, we've already sent more than a dozen points of combat damage, and that's how we want to win the game. Again, we're Kaalia, we're in Mardu colors, we win in combat. Bloodthirster and its power level is off the charts. This will end up becoming one of, if not the most powerful red creature in Magic's history. It absolutely demands a spot in the 99 of Kaalia builds. It's going in, and it's going to replace Overseer of the Damned. Now, this one was a tough decision, and what it boiled down to is because Overseer of the Damned, it is a demon, it does have flying. I do try to keep some symmetry with the angels, dragons, and demons within the 99, so we're not too overly reliant on one of the tribes. That's just more of a flavor thing than anything else. So with Overseer of the Damned's ETB trigger being to destroy a target creature, and then whenever a non-token creature an opponent controls dies, we get to create a black zombie creature token. And of course, that goes into play tapped. Here was the thought process with this change. So, Overseer of the Damned's ETB trigger happens once. I mean, we do have ways in which to bring this back from the graveyard. We do have Mimic Vat and ways in which to make copies of it. So, technically, we are going to lose a potential removal, quote-unquote, spell when we get rid of Overseer of the Damned. The 2/2 black zombie creatures coming into play tapped, Historically, they have done very little to affect the outcomes of games for us. Again, in Mardu colors with Kaalia, nearly every single creature that we have flies, so we put the pressure on our opponents. Our opponents are rarely pressuring us. And if that is the case, again, being in Mardu colors, we have a myriad of different removal options available to us in the colors of white, black, and red. The 99 of this deck is not short on removal, so slightly weakening our removal suite by replacing Overseer of the Damned with Bloodthirster brings more power to the deck, particularly when you consider Bloodthirster can attack every single opponent, every single combat. So that, to me, in my eyes, initially was a difficult choice to select Overseer of the Damned to come out, but with all of those reasons in place, now it just seems as easy as Sunday morning. All right, the next creature going in, it is Serra's Emissary. We've got a 7/7 Angel for 4 and triple white, but again, with Kaalia, we're hoping to get it into play either by turning her sideways as an attacker or using one of our other cheat-into-play effects. And when Serra Emissary ETBs, we choose a card type, and then we and creatures we control have protection from the chosen card type. More often than not, we are going to select creatures. We already have a suite of evasion-fueled creatures. Almost all of our creatures in this deck fly. What we don't have is a very formidable ground army for blocking in the case that we need it. With Serra's Emissary coming down and giving us protection from creature cards, that means that those creatures, they can attack us for days and days, but they will never deal any combat damage to us. And plus, a 7 flying in the air, that's going to be pretty good too. Those stats measure up very, very well, and even more so when we consider that we have a Kaalia in the command zone. So Serra's Emissary is going in for the purposes of adding another big, beefy flyer with the upside of having protection from creatures. Serra's Emissary is going to replace Dracuseth. Now, I have no ill will towards Dracuseth. It's a 7/7. It also is a CMC of 7, 4 and triple red. It also flies, of course, because it's a dragon. The attack triggers is what it boiled down to. Now, in this Kaalia deck, we are focused on utilizing Kaalia as a platform to getting our big winged monsters onto the battlefield, tapped and attacking. What that does not link up with or synergize with Dracuseth is Kaalia already puts the creature into play attacking. So we miss out on that attack trigger. So we can't deal 4 damage to one target, 3 damage to another target, and then 3 damage to a third target. We miss that initial targeting because of Kaalia putting it into play tapped and attacking. So the thought process here was, all right, we'll lose the 7/7 flyer, but we'll replace the 7/7 flyer with another 7/7 flyer that gives us a mass protection against all creatures. That, in my mind, is a very, very effective, efficient, and powerful upgrade to that 7/7 flying spot. All right, next creature going in, we have another angel. This one, it is Liesa, Forgotten Archangel. We got a 4/5 flying lifelinker for 2/2 white and a black. So the 5 CMC is extraordinarily manageable in a Kaalia deck. Kaalia herself only costs 4. So this could actually be one of those angels that, if we're doing everything on curve, Kaalia attacks on turn 5, puts in a different creature tapped and attacking, and then we cast Liesa, Forgotten Angel, to have an additional piece of board presence. Or, once we start to review her abilities, perhaps we cast her first and then send Kaalia into combat, just for the purposes of maximizing what Liesa brings to this deck. So, let's see what she does. Whenever another non-token creature we control dies, we will return that card to its owner's hand at the beginning of the next end step. So in the earlier scenario, if we already have Liesa on our side of the battlefield, and we send Kaalia into combat, and it puts a creature into play tapped and attacking, through some kind of instant speed spot removal, our opponent or opponents could really off our creatures. With Liesa on our side of the battlefield, we bring that card right back to our hand as long as they're not targeting Liesa with that spot removal first. And as an additional bonus, if a creature an opponent controls would die, we exile it instead. Because, in Commander, no one's ever trying to, exploit or take advantage of their graveyards, right? Right. So, Liesa's going in just because, she's an extremely versatile angel. She fits the flavor of the deck. The lifelink is let's not overlook the lifelink here. That could be a very, very helpful and determining factor whether or not we can push for victory by, extending the combat. We're sending her into combat. We're getting 8 points of life swing. The lifelink should not be overlooked, but bringing back those creatures if they get destroyed back to our hands, including potentially our own general. Kaalia gets hated off the field very, very quickly. And if we can get her into our hand as opposed to paying 2, 4, 6, maybe 8 with commander tax, well, that's going to be a lot more beneficial than the card that she is going to replace. So Liesa's going in, and Liesa is going to replace Kaalia version 2.0. And I will say right off the bat, to preface this exchange, this is a flavor hurt for me. I do have a flavor side to most of my decks, and I want to make sure that I can maintain flavor as well as power level. But here in this instance, in just looking at what this deck has to offer and the options available now with angels, dragons, and demons, it's just boiling down to a point where the strongest options are just in such high demand and high consideration that creatures like Kaalia's Zenith Seeker are just going the way of becoming obsolete in a deck like this. And I'm going to explain why I decided to make this swap in a moment. Let's review what Kaalia does. So she's Mardu colors. She's 3/3 flying vigilance. So she is the cheapest mana value creature in the entire deck. So when she ETBs, we look at the top 6 cards of our library. We may reveal an angel, a demon, and or a dragon card from among them and put them into our hand. Then we put the rest in the bottom of our library in a random order. So the top 6 cards, so that's, 6 out of 99. Well, not 99 because we already have a hand draw, but you know what I mean. So 6 cards. So at her ceiling, Kaalia puts 3 cards into our hand. At her floor, she puts 0. Now, we don't have 50 creatures in this deck. We have more of a very select in the mid to high 20s of creatures as a way in which to be able to control the battlefield through other aspects like, control, removal, card draw, stuff like that. So whiffing on a Kaalia Zenith Seeker ETB, it is possible. Is it going to be something that we're going to overly miss? I don't think so, because if we shift Kaalia to the right a little bit, Liesa is going to have the ability to bring creatures that get destroyed or creatures that die back to our hand. Kaalia's ETB trigger in and of itself, outside of Mimic Vatting or bringing it back from the graveyard or any kind of copying, Kaalia's is a one and done, and then we're left with a 3/3 flying vigilant human cleric that we can't even get into play with Kaalia's attack trigger. So what we're looking at here is repeatability through the use of getting more cards into our hand. And even if the creatures have to die on our side of the battlefield to do so, Liesa can do that more than Kaalia version 2.0. And plus with the lifelink, Liesa is going to do more for the overall synergy and power level of this deck than Kaalia can. I do think there might be a bit of a hole with the cards in our hand, because if we were to sync up a Kaalia Zenith Seeker with a Mimic Vat, just doing that once every round of turns, that is a synergy, that is an interaction that could be extraordinarily powerful. So if we have to revisit sometime in the future, reinserting Kaalia Zenith Seeker back into the 99 in some way, then we will be open to doing that. But for the moment, at this time, Liesa's going in, and Kaalia 2.0, you're going to have to take a seat. The flavor side of me just died a little bit. But I think we'll be all right. All right, so we got one more creature to add and then a few more cards, and we're going to call it quits on this version of this installment of the Up and Up series. Next up And this is a creature card that should have been in the 99 of this build many, many moons ago. Its abilities are fantastic and just exactly what we want to do in this Kaalia deck. And we're going to stress that word, ability. One of the best abilities is availability. And the only reason this creature wasn't already in the 99 is because a copy of it was not available. Well, available it is now, so let the 99 welcome with arms wide open Dragon Lord Kolaghan. We have a 6/4 flying dragon. It has haste for 4 in Rakdos colors. It gives other creatures we control haste, and whenever an opponent casts a creature spell or a planeswalker spell with the same name as a card in that player's graveyard, they lose 10 life. Now, that last ability is not really going to be, exceedingly relevant in our format, outside of Relentless Rat decks or Rat Colony or Persistent Petitioners or, decks that violate the maximum card allotment of the same type of card. So outside of one of those niche decks, that last ability will do nothing. But that's not the ability that we're really enamored with here with Dragon Lord Kolaghan. It's the fact that it has haste and it gives all other creatures we control haste. We do have mass recursion spells in this deck. And if Dragon Lord Kolaghan is luckily in the graveyard when we cast one of them, all of our creatures are going to gain haste, and we should be able to swing for game-winning, game-ending combat. All right, so Dragon Lord Kolaghan going in. Coming out is going to be Demon Lord Belzenlok. Here, the switch here was pretty simple. So, like some of the other dragons that like some of the other creatures that we've already taken out here with Overseer of the Damned and Kaalia Zenith Seeker, we're taking out an ETB trigger as a way in which to enhance the overall deck by providing it with more repeatable or static effects. Now, when Demon Lord Belzenlok would come into play, let's not overlook the fact that it's also a 6/6 flying trampler at only a very, very manageable 4 and 2 black. So we don't even need to really depend on Kaalia to get this demon into our side of the battlefield. But when it ETBs, we do have the potential of getting multiple cards in our hand. We're going to take some life for doing that, but we do have the option of having that happen. But again, outside of a Mimic Vatting or a recursion from the graveyard, the Demon Lord here has a one-and-done ETB ability, where Dragon Lord Kolaghan has the static ability of giving all of our creatures haste. In a vacuum, Dragon Lord Kolaghan's ability is going to be far more superior than Demon Lord Belzenlok, and now that there is a copy available of him, Dragon Lord Kolaghan has to force its way into the 99, and that's going to be at the expense of Belzenlok. All right, we have just a handful of cards left. We're shifting away from creature spells to a big-time sorcery, and this sorcery is going to win the game with us, particularly if one Dragon Lord Kolaghan is in our graveyard, and that is Rise of the Dark Realms, the ultimate late-game finisher. We got 7 and 2 black at sorcery speed. We will put all creatures from all graveyards onto the play under our control. Again, as we slowly shift this Liliana-driven card to the right, if Dragon Lord Kolaghan is in our graveyard, all of those creatures that just went onto our side of the battlefield, they will all have haste. We should be able to win the game every time thereafter, and that's the reason why Rise of the Dark Realms is going in. It's going to replace another recursion spell. It is a repeatable spell if we have the good fortune or the good luck to draw it multiple times during a game. However, this spell is only one creature from any graveyard at a little bit more than half the mana value of Rise of the Dark Realms, and that is Beacon of Unrest. It's 3 and 2 black, again at sorcery speed. We get to select an artifact or creature card from a graveyard and put it onto the battlefield, then we shuffle this spell into our library. So what we're looking to do here is we're looking to take out a middling, potentially repeatable recursion spell for a game-ending mass recursive spell that should win us the game if we successfully cast it and get all of those creatures onto our side of the battlefield. We are looking to upgrade the power level here, and let's face it, Rise of the Dark Realms is going to have the arrow pointing at Beacon of Unrest as it is greater than that. All right, so with that being said, we have a couple of ways here that we're going to update our land and mana base. We're going to start with adding a mana rock, and thank you to the Warhammer 40k Commander decks for reprinting Talisman of Indulgence. This is our Rakdos Talisman. It'll cost us 2 colorless mana. It taps for a colorless mana, or it taps for a black or red mana, and if we so choose that second option, we'll take 1 point of damage when doing so. That's going to go in, and it's going to replace Reliquary Tower. We don't have a great deal of massive card draw spells in this deck. And let's be honest, now that we have a Dragon Lord Kolaghan and a Rise of the Dark Realms, if we ever get to that point, it may be beneficial to be able to have a maximum hand size so we can get some of those creatures into our graveyard, setting it up for a mass recursive win. So we will eliminate a land that only gives us colorless mana and no maximum hand size for a mana rock that we could ramp out, have that colorless mana with the option of paying 1 life and getting a black or red mana. All right, and the last swap, we're going to do a slight upgrade to the actual land base. Coming out is just 1 basic swap. So if we're taking out a basic swap, the land that we're putting in its place better generate some black mana. It does. It generates black and red, and it is our Rakdos fan land. It is Luxury Suite. It's going to come into play untapped as long as we have 2 or more opponents. Don't worry, we'll be controlling those opponents too. And it taps for a black or it taps for a red. So that's a slight upgrading to our land base and a little bit additional mana ramp in the form of Talisman of Indulgence. And there you have it, MTG BC. We have updated and upgraded our Kaalia of the Vast EDH deck. Let me know your thoughts about these changes in the comments section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic.